In 1994, rangers at Pilanesberg Game Reserve in South Africa started finding dead rhinos. At first, everyone assumed poachers, except the horns were still attached. Then another rhino died, and another. The wounds were bizarre. Deep punctures in the back and shoulders, broken ribs. One animal had injuries suggesting something enormous had actually knelt on top of it, and around every carcass were the same signs: flattened bushes, broken trees, and footprints the size of dinner plates, elephant tracks. But elephants don't hunt rhinos. So why were they killing them? To understand that, you have to go back to 1980. Pilanesberg had recently been turned into a wildlife reserve, and 18 elephants were brought in. Every one of them was an orphan. They were only 4 to 6 years old, and not a single adult came with them. The calves came from Kruger National Park, where elephant numbers had become extremely high. At the time, the accepted solution was culling. Helicopters would locate a herd. The shooters would kill the matriarch first. She was the oldest female, carrying decades of knowledge about water, danger, migration routes, and survival. When she fell, the rest of the family often gathered around her instead of running. Then the shooters killed them too. The young calves were usually spared because they were small enough to transport, so they watched their families die. Then they were loaded onto trucks and sent to other parks. Pilanesberg became one of them. The intention was to save the calves, but something important couldn't be transported with them. The adults. A normal elephant calf grows up surrounded by older elephants. It learns by watching them. Where to go, when to retreat, how to react to danger, and most importantly, where a young male belongs in the hierarchy. At Pilanesberg, the oldest elephants were other children. For years, the consequences were subtle. Then the young bulls grew up. They became increasingly aggressive. They charged safari vehicles. They chased tourists. And in 1993, one young bull killed a tourist. A professional hunter was sent to kill it. The elephant killed him too. Then came the rhinos. In 1994, 10 rhinos were violently killed in only 3 months. By the end of the year, 20 were dead. Rangers began investigating the attacks like a serial case. They photographed the carcasses, recorded tracks, and followed suspicious elephants. Eventually, researchers noticed something strange. The attacks weren't random. Every attacker was male. Everyone had grown up as an orphan, and every attacker was in musth. Musth is a normal hormonal state in adult male elephants. Testosterone rises dramatically, making the bull extremely aggressive. But in wild elephant society, young males normally encounter older bulls before this becomes a serious problem. A young male eventually leaves his family and joins groups of older males. There, he learns his place. A bull in his 40s or 50s doesn't need to explain the hierarchy. He's simply bigger, stronger, older. The younger elephant knows it. But the Pilanesberg bulls had never experienced that. They were entering musth around 18, roughly a decade earlier than expected, and instead of lasting days, it could continue for months. They had the hormones of adult males without the social structure that normally controlled them. There was nobody above them, and the rhinos became the victims. Researchers eventually estimated that the elephants had killed as many as 49 rhinos. Several young bulls were shot, but the killings continued. So the park tried something nobody had tried before. Instead of removing the young elephants, they would bring in what was missing: adult bulls. In 1998, 6 adult males between roughly 25 and 35 years old were captured in Kruger and transported to Pilanesberg. They were released into the reserve. Nobody trained them. They didn't need training. They simply behaved like adult elephants. The young bulls immediately noticed. For the first time in their lives, a teenager in musth could walk toward another elephant and discover that he wasn't the biggest animal in the room. Researchers began seeing injuries on the younger bulls, apparently caused by the older males disciplining them. The teenagers also started following the adults, and then their behavior changed. The early onset of musth began disappearing. The extreme aggression decreased. In some cases, musth could collapse almost immediately after a young bull encountered a dominant adult. Then, something even more remarkable happened. The rhino killings stopped. Completely. After the adult bulls arrived, Pilanesberg recorded no further elephant killings of rhinos. Even Tom Thumb, one of the suspected killers, stopped attacking them. The elephants hadn't forgotten their childhood. Their trauma hadn't disappeared. Nothing about their past had changed. Only their environment had. They finally had adults above them. And that revealed something important about social animals. A society isn't just food, water, territory, and safety. It also has structure. Older members create boundaries that younger members learn simply by living around them. They show when aggression is acceptable. They establish hierarchy. They provide a ceiling for behavior. And sometimes, they don't even need to teach anything directly. They just need to exist. The young elephants had everything necessary to survive, but they were missing the generation above them. For years, nobody could see the consequences. Then adolescence arrived, and the missing adults became the difference between normal behavior and deadly violence. When the older bulls finally appeared, the system corrected itself. Not because the young elephants' past had changed, because their present had. The most dangerous elephants in Pilanesberg didn't need to be destroyed. They needed someone older to tell them, in the only language elephants truly understand. You're not in charge.